Welcome, friends and fellow passionate entrepreneurial teachers. I am joined today by fellow entrepreneurial teacher and web designer James Feudo. We met through the Metro West Chamber of Commerce, which is actually one of the best chambers that I have ever been a part of, and it serves the greater Boston area in Massachusetts. So James is the president and chief technologist of JFV Solutions, and he's a web designer web design and digital marketing agency. James has always loved technology, which led him to building his first website in 1996 while earning his master's in computer information systems at Bentley University. And after nearly 25 years as a career in corporate IT, James fulfilled his lifelong dream and transitioned from full-time employee to full-time business owner in January of 2021. JFV Solutions has since built high-performing websites for dozens of businesses throughout the U.S. And outside of work, James enjoys spending time with family and friends, learning the art of crafting the perfect pizza and karaoke. So, welcome, James. And to kick things off, I think everybody would love to hear what made you take the leap 3 years ago to becoming a full-time entrepreneur. What was the moment that you decided, I'm all in, I'm going to do this?
Well, it's funny. It's actually something I've wanted to do for a very, very, very long time. When I was 10 years old, so I'm gonna actually go way back. When I was 10 years old, my dad had a few books that I noticed that were things like Practical Real Estate Brokerage and How to Double Your Money in 6 years, which was a book about, you know, buying mortgages and things like that. He was in real estate when I was very, very young. And then as I got older, I worked for a printing company when I was 16 years old, and the printing company actually print out Harvard business cases. So the ones that they use, like when I was at Bentley, um, we'd have them as part of our assignments. Obviously, if you're at Harvard, you need those. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember reading this one on a break once. So I was exposed to it at a pretty young age, and it was something that I'd wanted to do. Um, right after college, it was something I had hoped to do. Um, I got kind of sidetracked. I decided to take a job, and then another job, and then another job. In 1998, I bought the domain name jvf.com, so for the company, and knowing that at some point I would use it. I started out as a freelance web designer. I was a software engineer at a company, which was a dot-com company back in the days in the late 90s, and was doing things like back-end coding and designing systems and things like that, which was kind of fun. But I had always wanted to take that leap. So, for many, many years, I was doing it part-time. On the side is, you know, um, kind of having my foot in both doors. As the pandemic hit, I started reevaluating a lot of things that I had started and never finished. That was a habit, that I had realized I had built up. One of the first things I did is I finished a book that I started in 2008, got it published. And then I'm like, well, what's the next chapter or the next thing that I wanted to do? And that was to actually bring the business full time. I'd gone a bunch of different routes, and it just happened to be the right time. I'm like, it's a good time to walk away from where I was, and um, you know, I can't really talk too much about the circumstances that led up to it, but like what eventually ended up happening is I was at a point of transition, and I could go from, I had the choice of going, finding another job or doing what I was doing for many years, or I looked at my age and I'm like, if I don't do it now, I'm going to, be in my 50s, 60s, 70s, and be like, oh yeah, I should have done it, 20 years ago or 10 years ago or whenever I had the chance. And I kind of saw it as my last opportunity to get out there and go for it. And so that's why I made the choice. I was looking at my different options too, and there was really, when I saw the available jobs out there, and I compared it to what felt like I could do, I wanted to be able to contribute. I wanted to be able to do something and give back. And I felt like, a traditional job, and I'm not saying there aren't companies out there that allow you to do that, but when I look at where my life is today, the people I interact with, I mean, Stephanie, you're one of those people that I get to interact with pretty regularly, which is good. And we had our 3-year anniversary a couple weeks ago where it was great to have you and Ken come up from Connecticut, another friend slash client come from New Hampshire. And that while I didn't envision that at the time I made the choice, that night when I was looking at the folks that came to support, what JVF has grown into, um, I don't think I could have ever done that by not being an entrepreneur. I mean, I there you get recognition within companies, and it's not something that doesn't happen within companies. Like you can be a rock star within some of these organizations, but I just think it would have been a different journey to get that way. Where this journey is bringing me exactly where I feel like I need to be. So the reason I went with web design and digital marketing, it was something I was very, very familiar with. I've been active in the industry for, oh my gosh, a quarter of a century now. And which is scary, more than a quarter of a century. How far back was 1997, 1996? Um, but it to me was just something where I love technology. I'm very passionate about helping businesses and the web design and the digital marketing. What that does is a lot of folks that we work with, they're not really sure where to start, and it can be very overwhelming. And um, again, I'm probably like going way too far on some of these things, but I also used to teach. So like that's why this when you told me about this podcast, it was perfect for me because I taught at night at a local continuing ed program, and I taught things like blogging and WordPress and digital marketing. I also taught public speaking and job interviewing and networking, but the digital marketing stuff, that was where I really felt like there was a huge opportunity because people would come to me and I'd be shocked at the proposals that they would share that people sent them. I remember a woman coming up to me and she's like, I forget, maybe $1,000 so she could get 1,000 subscribers to her Facebook page before the ads were as popular as the way they worked out now. It's probably like 15 years ago. And I said, okay, so you spend $1,000, you get 1,000 people that like your page. What's next? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I said, what's probably next is this person's going to say, all right, join my $300 a month program and I'll do all the posts for you. And I'm like, you've got to be prepared for that. And I just find it's a huge pet peeve that I have in this industry where people are constantly, bad stories about getting ripped off, um, hiring people to do something. Like somebody reached out to us, they had the wrong state in on their website and they just didn't know how to update it. It took me 3 minutes to go in and do it for them. And I was just like, don't worry about it. It's my pleasure to help you. And it's just, yeah, it's for me being able to go out and help people. Um, and make sure that they're following the right journey, they're on the right journey to go to where they need to be successful online. I mean, that's our mission. Our mission is to help to ensure that everybody has the ability to be successful online. That's our mission. Um, and it's something that, I feel like I should have it tattooed on my eyelids. So every time I blink, I remember it. But it's one of those things where I say to the team all the time, it's like, when we're making a decision or we're talking about, a proposal that we're doing for somebody or a job that we're doing, and it's like, all right, will this make them more successful online? That's kind of our acid test for whether or not, we go one way or another. So that is my long, probably like 20-minute story about how I got into it and why.
Yeah, no, that was perfect. And you did answer a few of my questions, but it also sparked a few more. So to start, going back to that decision that you made where you were at a choice point, what advice would you give to someone that finds themselves in that kind of position? Because I feel like in your story there is a long period of preparation that you didn't necessarily know was building to that choice to make the leap. But a lot of entrepreneurship is, kind of building the plane on the way down. You got to just jump and build the bicycle while you're riding it, whatever analogy you want to use. But at the same time, you also don't want to completely put yourself in a position where you're panicking about how you're going to feed your family. So what advice would you give to someone if they're at that choice point?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of ads on YouTube, for example, of people that are, they take a certain approach to entrepreneurship where it's like either they're like, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're a loser. Anyone that doesn't work for, you work for somebody else, oh my gosh, you're not cool. And then there's also ads that I see where people are saying things like, it's easy to do, I own my own business, I fly on private jets, I do this, I do that, I have a mansion. Um, I feel like those are very misleading and it sends the wrong message to people. So my advice to begin with is to talk to people that are actually out doing it in the trenches. I mean, there's statistics out there that like 80% of businesses fail within 5 years, and I don't know how true those are and how accurate they are today. I don't, the numbers have probably changed. But one thing that always strikes me is it was the CEO of NVIDIA recently was asked like, how would he do things differently? And he's like, I wouldn't start a business. He, he said starting it was like a million times harder than he expected it to be. And there is, I wouldn't say it's a million times, it is a lot more difficult to do it than you realize. And I mean, having done this, part-time for, 20 plus years, even transitioning into it, I had taken probably my last 4 or 5 years of my, at my most recent job that I left. Um, I took time off from doing that and I just focused on work. I didn't have a schedule that allowed me to continue to do this. I had maybe one or two clients that I would help a couple times throughout the year, but I wasn't, it wasn't like as heavy into it. And even in that small period of time, a lot of things changed. So I'm thinking, all right, I had done a run, maybe let's say 10 years prior, where I was ramping up the freelancing, you call it, and I got a lot of my leads through Craigslist back then. Then when I went to do this 3 years ago, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go on Craigslist, I'll post a whole bunch of ads, I'll have more clients and I'll know what to do with. And, a lot of things had changed. Craigslist had changed. They charge you money for ads. So what I was getting for free was going to cost me about $300 a week. And then I realized too that it wasn't really the target audience that I wanted to go for because a lot of times people are looking for, cheap, low cost stuff. We're more of a boutique, higher end. Um, so those are the types of things that like it's so much more difficult to do than people lead you to believe. There's going to be a lot of long hours. Um, it's going to take time for you to get up to where you want to be. I spent the first year kicking myself saying, "Oh, I should have done this a year ago. I should have done this." But it's also part of the learning process because I still make mistakes and we all do. And my mindset when it comes to mistakes is that, oh yeah, this is a mistake that it's, let's say it's costing me $200 right now. It's probably going to save me 20,000 5 years from now because I'll remember not to do that. But the advice I would give, and again, I'm very wordy sometimes with my responses, so um, is just to really ask around and talk to people. Go to your local chamber, go to a local business association, networking group, networking events where there are entrepreneurs there and ask them. I've had a number of people that have reached out to me that they've met me in an event or they've found me online and asked if they could just pick my brain for 30 minutes. And a lot of us are we're a community and we all want to help each other. Um, so I do that quite a bit. I'm always there to share my stories, share my mistakes, so other people don't have to make them. Um, but it's something that, yeah, if you can start it, well, you want to be able to transition. That's a little bit of a catch-22 when you do that because the more money you make, like, when you're making, let's say, 50,000 a year, 80,000 or 100 or 200, as your income starts growing, that's a larger gap you're going to start off with when you start your business because most people when they go from a job to a business, that income level is going to drop significantly. So you've got to be prepared for that. You want to make sure that you have some money saved up. You want to be smart about what you do. I know people that they've had to take out loans on their houses and things like that to keep their businesses going. Thankfully, I have not had to do that. But you've got to be really committed to it as well. So the other difficult piece, because a lot of people will start it as a side business, is that you really got to make a decision at some point, and it's different for everybody. So you've got to figure out where that point is, and maybe you decide, all right, it's a review cycle at your work. Maybe it's a time where you're thinking about growth, and you're like, all right, in the next year, I'm going to do all this stuff at work. I'm going to do all this stuff to transition away from my business so that when I have my next review, I collect my raise or collect whatever, and then I move on. And it's something where, you've got to make that transition at some point. On the other extreme, there's the whole burn the boats, you know, analogy for it, where it's just like, yeah, I think it was Cortez that, um, he burned all the boats, so his crew had no choice but to attack. And, I mean, that's sometimes what you've got to do, depending on your personality. But, you've got to talk it over if you have a significant other or spouse, you have a family. Um, you've got to think about the people other than yourself. Like I had a lot of discussions with people that were close to me when I was making the decision of what to do next. And sometimes you got to sell the idea to them. Um, but it's just, and it can go either way. There's no guarantee that your business will be successful, but there's also no guarantee that it will fail. So, it's a lot of figuring things out. You've got to have the stomach for it. You've got to know that, you're not going to have a consistent income for a little while. And that little while, it could be a few months, it could be a few years, you don't know. I see people on Shark Tank all the time that have like 7, 8-year-old businesses that are bringing in millions of dollars, but they don't take a salary. And they haven't at all. So there's a level of commitment that you've got to be aware of, and everybody's situation is unique. So in order to be able to do that, you want to make sure that you have conversations with folks that are, in a similar industry. Not necessarily a potential competitor, but like a potential supplier, potential customers. Um, learning from people that are doing what you want to do is helpful, but you may not get a lot of information or people that want to talk to you. But anything you can to learn about the industry, the environment, and the economy too. The economy is always in flux, it's changing. Um, so it's very difficult to predict anyway. It's like, if you're thinking of being like a commercial real estate developer in 2018, that at the time sounded like a great idea. And then this pandemic hit. No, a lot of folks are working remote. Commercial real estate isn't really, it's starting to bounce back a little bit, but it's not quite what it was. So, the other thing too is you got to think about what potential threats are. And, so a
That was
lot
a
to think about.
fabulous answer. Yeah, no, that was there were a lot of really good things in there. And I like how each piece of what you've talked about so far has come back to the human element. So recognizing the community, connecting with people, making sure you check in with your spouse or, significant relationships that you have when you're going to make a leap like this. You're going to need that support, just like it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to raise a business too. So you need
Oh,
to
yeah.
know that everybody's on board. And even the way that you look at your business, even though it's a digital online, web building thing, you still talked about really bringing the humanity into that digital space. And I know you do a lot of contribution work. So can you tell us a little bit about how that contribution plays into what you do? How does contribution go with web design?
Um, it's interesting because it's more of our culture. So
Hmm.
when I started this, one of the things I wanted to do, there was, I've worked for a number of companies, both big and small, throughout the years, and there's things I've liked about each of them, and there's things that I felt like we could do differently. So, and I'm reading a book about culture right now too, so that's it's like really on my brain right now. Um, and I think having that culture and the people that you bring on board on your, with your team, I think it all starts kind of with it. And the people that we hire, especially lately, um, they're all like, I can teach people how to code, I can teach people how to do whatever, but like teaching people to be a good person is very, very difficult. Um, so it's like, and I try to lead by example. So I'm involved in this program called Read to a Child. So every Tuesday and Wednesday, I go to a local school. I have two fourth graders that I read to for 30 minutes. And watching the value that those kids get from it, it to me makes me feel good. And my team sees it as well because they know it's like, all right, Tuesday he's running to read to a child, like they know that I'll be unavailable if they need something for those times. Um, and it's, a lot of it you've got to lead by example. And that's where I think a lot of business owners fail because it's like, do what I say, not do as I do. And so it starts with that, but I've always had I have a soft spot for nonprofits. There's the city that we're in. We have a number of nonprofits. We're working with a downtown business development nonprofit that promotes all these local businesses. So we've gone down, we've done some free marketing for them, where we've, done some videos for different businesses and just kind of help point them in the right direction. I mean, many of them don't have a marketing budget, but we're able there, we're still able to just kind of help them out, show them what they can do. That personally makes me feel good. I mean, I know we don't want to be a nonprofit ourselves, as I joke. I mean, we are here, it's as a business, you've got to stay in business. But I just feel like it's just being a good member of the community. You've got to go out and help people. We do a lot of stuff like you do for the chamber. We volunteer. I'm an ambassador just as you are, Stephanie. And it's just and the connections you make with these folks, like knowing, like seeing the difference. You know, we have a client we did some work for. We helped out with some things that they help with food insecurity. And for me, it was a lesson in I used to do Lean Six Sigma and I love process efficiency. And when they took me through um, their operation, which is this big warehouse where people can come in and they pick their groceries, it's you can't afford to feed you or your family this week. Just come on in here. We'll take care of you. The bags that they give people reusable bags that are made from like pet food bags that are sterilized and cleaned. So those things are not going in landfills. They're helping people. And then these people, when they go shopping, they can reuse the bags. Um, the way they handle their produce is that whatever produce isn't taken, it's stored as long as it's they're able to, and then they use the leftover produce to create soups and other like types of meals with it. And then whatever's left over from that either gets composted or fed to livestock in the area, gets shipped off to a farm. Even a lot of their donations come in cardboard. That cardboard sent to a farmer that composts it. Like I can go on and on about the efficiency of that operation, but like for me, I'm glad we helped them out, but then also, there is a side benefit that we learn as well. And the connections you make are priceless. it's more good people in your circle. And Harvey McKay once said that, he mentioned the concept of doing well by doing good. And while I don't always have the doing well part in the back of my mind, and I won't say that it always contributes to that, um, when I look in the mirror or when I go to bed at night and I'm thinking about things, what makes me feel really good is knowing that we're out there helping people in the community. I mean, I've had so many people that are so grateful for just either an introduction or someone, they're like, "Oh, I was going to go this direction," and I'm like, that's not really the right thing you want to do, or you don't need to spend money on that. Here's a free tool to help you do it. Um, I mean, we tell people about Canva all the time. You use the free version of Canva. Why hire? Not that we want to put ourselves or other people that do graphic design out of business, but like, if you can't afford to hire someone to do a business card in like 20 minutes, you can do them yourself on Canva or, similar program, bring them to a local printer and, for a fraction of the cost of, hiring someone to do it for you. So, it's just something and I've been, as an adult, I've been, involved in a lot of the local programs. We belong to a bunch of local business organizations. When people need help, we're always like, what can we do? How can we promote your events? How can we, you know, and it doesn't have to be big, like, because, you may not have time, you may not have the money to donate, but like, something as simple as liking and sharing their social media posts, like, if someone's doing a gala or they're doing a fundraiser, share it on your social media. It costs you nothing to do that. And it takes like only a few seconds. Just, write a quick blurb, so and so is having this event, this fundraiser, if you can contribute. Do it especially around the end of the calendar year when people are trying to maximize those tax deductions. So, time it a certain way too, but it's just if it feels good to be part of a community. And I've been touched by, just some of the experiences on my wall. You can't see it over here, but two of the kids, actually the two that I'm reading to now, I have these nice notes and, the compliments that they give the coordinator there about, me and the other readers. It's just, you can't put a price on it.
That's awesome. There's again a lot of really good stuff for business owners to pull from there. And we've always done the same thing, especially with our martial arts school as a local brick and mortar business. Our favorite way to market has just been to get out in the community because then people talk about you. They see you at the town fairs and they see you, at the charity events and contributing online, in the different ways you were talking about supporting other local businesses and events that are going on. And then, that word of mouth spreads. You build that know, like, and trust. It's not going to necessarily be as fast as maybe running a really successful Facebook ad, but the people you're going to draw in are the clients that you want to work with, the students that are going to fit with your tribe, so that's awesome. Now, one thing that was in there was a whole lot of stuff. And I know we recently talked about time and trying to figure out how to balance all of these things. So I'm curious, I know you were kind of starting to think about that. How do you or how have you been experimenting lately with balancing your time so that you can do all of these various things and still do the work?
Well, it's funny. I found a video recently that had, I don't know, like 10 or 15 different time management tools and tips and techniques and all this stuff, and they reviewed them all in depth. And I'm like, holy smokes, there's like so much out there on it. Um, what I've found is just throughout the years, I mean, I've had to evolve the way I do my planning. I mean, I use a calendar. That's my number one tool. Um, what I love about that is, I have Android Auto in my truck. So I can just push a button on my steering wheel while I'm driving and not being distracted, because trust me, it drives me crazy when I see people on their cell phones when they're supposed to be paying attention to the road. But I can just like on my steering wheel hit a button and then just say create new appointment. And it'll be a reminder for maybe if I'm getting home, like yesterday, I had to run an errand and then I was coming back to the office, didn't want to forget to do something. So I put that in there. I use a bunch of different apps to track what I do every day and plan out my day. and those tools are always changing, but I have a running to-do list, and then I also every day I plan it out, try and plan it out the night before. If I'm unable to, then what I'll do is I'll plan it out first thing in the morning. I have a very you know, regimented routine. I work in an office. I don't work out of my house, and that is something that I found to be incredibly helpful because it creates that separation. When we were all stuck at home during the pandemic, you don't have that, so like your time is just a blur. And even both when I was working full time when the pandemic started, I was with my business when it kind of tapered off, and being able to not get distracted when you go upstairs to get a drink of water and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta run the dishwasher, or oh, I gotta, or there's mail on the table that you want to deal with. And here I'm focused 100% on work. So that's been huge. My morning routine, I do a lot of, I have a process that I go through every morning. I get up at roughly the same time. I do, I do a set of readings that's faith related, from I'm a practicing Catholic, so I read the daily mass every morning for me because it's just to me it just kind of gets me in the right mode. But I also look at some inspirational stuff as well. Um, and then I don't drink coffee, so I have tea in the morning, so to perk me up, get my morning my morning hit of caffeine. And I'll review my plan for the day, and then it's just when I get in the office, it's like execute. There's a lot of things out there. Like I like to have music in the background, so I have a Spotify playlist that I created of just background music, which you'd love because a lot of it is Disney theme park background music. So um, it's actually called. I'm looking at my other screen that has it up. It's called like JVF Office Playlist. So if you search for it on Spotify, you're welcome to use it. Um,
I will definitely do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what kind of where I got the inspiration from. Where I like, I can't work in silence. I like something in the background. And that just helps me, brings me to a place that I always am happy where I'm at. Happiest place or most magical place on earth, right? Um, but then, other things like something I've started doing recently, I was a wrestler in high school, and as a kid, I loved pro wrestling. So I started watching Monday Night Raw again. So that's, it's hard to take it all in 3 hours on a Monday night, but like often I'll record it and I won't look at any spoiler on Tuesday or Wednesday or however late it takes for me to get to it. But I also think you've got to prioritize time with yourself, for yourself. For me, it's just like it gives me, something other than work to think about, because I'll be honest, the last few years it's always been work, work, work. It's my friend. There's a blurred line between who's a friend and who's a client. Like when we had our event the other night, and I'm like, oh, this is my friend, and I'm naming clients, and I'm like, yeah, and but it's like everybody, you kind of need that they say work-life balance, but you need some kind of a separation. And that's like you mentioned the karaoke. There's a bunch of us, we go to karaoke pretty regularly. um that while we're business, we know each other through the business world of things. But we're also friends. Some of us were friends first and did business, some of us business then friends. But the ultimate thing there is it's just like you've got to have that fun. You're going to make time to go out there and enjoy yourself, and not just be in front of your computer working and working and working, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up hating your job and hating your business. I mean, for me, I love what I do, but there's times where, I'm like trying to solve a technical challenge, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I had to figure out how to, create a zip code search for products. And, coding that out took me a while. And I'm like, I had to just step away. I'd be, focused, writing it out on the whiteboard, writing it down on paper, researching it. And I'd be lying in bed at night, thinking about it. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. I'd get up in the morning thinking about it. Like, how can I make this more efficient? What can I do? What about this feature? What about that? And, so you want to have that separation. So, I think everybody's different. So like what works for me may not work for other folks. Um, so like some people use the Pomodoro technique, some people they use the first things first. They depending on what book they've read. Um, a lot of times what I find is I've always been different. Use that as a nice way to say it. Um, and so a lot of times I just find that I have to kind of create my own thing. And so I have, I have my own system that I've built and I'm still refining it to this day. Every year I go in and look at the templates that I create and tweak those. But yeah, I mean, you want to have a process for doing things. You want to make sure everything's documented. There's so many time saving tips out there. Um, but it's really just kind of like sticking to a schedule and having a routine that you follow to get you started on the right frame of mind. Um, and also know that it'll change. As you grow and your business grows and your needs grow, what you're doing now may not be appropriate for you when, your business is bigger. You may be a one person shop right now, solopreneur, and then, you start hiring people. Your time management is going to be completely different because you'll be focused more on delegation and less on, prioritization of the enormous workload that you have in front of you. So those are some tips.
Yeah, that was a perfect case study for what we talk about in momentum learning systems and the work that we do for living a life of integration. It's the same thing for us. Actually, a lot of the routines that I have are very similar, kind of that. I know Tony Robbins called it like an hour of power, and then you have Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. So there's a lot of ways that looking at, the routine of starting your day well, but what you talked about, just starting with a little bit of time for yourself, a little bit of inspiration, something that's going to fill you up and get you ready and your mindset in the right place for the day is a great way to start. And then with our employees, which I always feel weird even saying that word because they're our family. Like we spend Christmas Eve together. I don't have any siblings, so that my employees are basically my kids' aunt and uncle. It's this appropriate enmeshing and integration where everyone's on the same page, the culture is there, so that we've created this space where that we can all be ourselves, we're all moving and looking in the same direction and passionate about the same things, and then that allows us to all work together in a much more relaxed and productive way because we're all on the same page, we're integrated. So that was excellent. And now, do you have you kind of, I think you talked about it a lot, but I've heard a lot of indications of moments of reflection where you are very aware and paying attention as you move through your life. So do you have any specific systems or like checkpoints throughout the year, or any thoughts on that reflection piece? Because that's how we keep learning and growing. You have to look at where you are, what you did to get here, and then figure out where you want to go and what you need to do to move forward. So how do you reflect and evolve?
It's funny you mentioned that because I think we're all growing, and one of the things that I learned over the summer with the team was that I was primarily focused. I would see life as this giant to-do list. So I'd be like, sitting with the team, I'm like, crap, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. It's like, why is this taking so long? Not, like picking on somebody, but more of a rhetorical question. Why is all this stuff taking us so long? Like, and they would sometimes put me in check and be like, we've done this, and this. And I'm like, you're right. And it's funny because most of my team members are half my age or younger. Um, and it's interesting to get their perspective on things because I'm like, you always think that, all right, you're the old person in the room, you know more than everybody, or because of your title, and it's not true. I learn a lot from, a lot of our team members are just fresh out of college, and this is like their first real work experience. and I learn from them, they learn from me, and it's a two-way street. So um, that's like, I don't schedule reflections so much. Like I don't, um, I mean, I do at end of the month, usually even at the end of the week, subconsciously I'll think about, look at what we've accomplished throughout the week. We're going to have a more formal process around it, as we're continuing to grow and things are where the company is, evolving and moving to the next level. But it's pretty organic. It just like it happens when it does. And I'll use a great example is we had um, we had this person that interned for us this summer, and you know he and another one of the interns from the summer were they had been working together all summer, but they didn't really, it's not that they didn't connect, but they just like that friendship, that there was a lot of potential for good friendship there. Um, but it just kind of evolved slowly. And then I put the two of them on a project, and all of a sudden, it's like the way they were palling around with each other. I mean, we have that little kitchen downstairs where we always do like pizza lunches here. So they were like having a blast, like they teamed up together, and that connection that it's like, it's where you would have expected them to be after working together for 2 or 3 months. But it's like instead of it gradually going there, it's just like boom, like all of a sudden it's like um you could just see how all of a sudden it's just like that friendship just materialized. And as someone looking at it on the outside, I was just like, I walked back thinking it was magical. Like to me, when you see that on the team, and it was a perfect example of how, we bring people together both within our organization and outside of, the community that we're part of. Um, that just kind of it got me thinking about how, what we do here, it's more than just, it's not, it's more than just being, it's more than a business. It's yeah, I don't want to say it's a way of life, but it is, it's definitely a process, and it's definitely, a bunch of just events. But like that one in particular, I don't know if I really described it well enough, but just seeing these two guys just, hang out and just have a good time over pizza and talking about a project they just wrapped up. It personally made me feel great. And I'm like, and I tease the two of them about it to this day. I'm like, that moment was just, it just always stands out in my mind. And it's kind of like an inside joke in the sense that it means probably a lot more to me than to anyone that I'm describing it to. But that's kind of how a lot of stuff works with me. It's like, when I see people grow, we have some folks that were with us just for the summer. We have folks that have been with us for, about a year, over a year. Um, and watching them grow, it's like kind of like with children, you just kind of look at them, in the sense that it's like, because I always make the comparison, and some people don't like the analogy, but it's like when you're a manager, you're like a parent. You're responsible for the growth and protection of the people that work for you, just like you are if you have children. And the one thing I always look at is growth, regardless of how old somebody is. And watching them grow, watching people move outside their comfort zone, seeing people that were like a little camera shy that are now like out there taking selfies, and, you know, um, talking to, like I brought one of our team members with me to on a client. Um, we went to her store to talk to her about a couple of things, and my team member started talking, and I'm just sitting there watching her, and I'm like blown away. She's like, well, you want to do this, this, and this. And I'm just like sitting there trying not to grin too much, because I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, it's like watching your kid graduate. And it's like you see all of this stuff, and it's like sometimes you don't realize how much people are picking up. And afterwards, she said to me, she's like, "Oh, I hope it's okay that I spoke. I hope I'm like, it was more than okay." Like, I said, I was sitting there, I'm like, wow, I should just send you out to do this stuff. I'm like, I said, I didn't realize how much you've picked up, how much you've learned, how much, and how well you carry yourself. I'm like, for me, it was a huge eye-opening experience because I, I was just like, I was proud. I was like, I'm just like, I'm very excited for you, for being able to grow like that. So, it's like those things are the memories that stick out to me. I mean, yeah, we look at the end of the month, we look at our financials. I do have some formal processes, obviously, at the end of the year when, we're especially like around Thanksgiving. Our fiscal year does go, we use the calendar year for our fiscal year. So when I'm looking at receivables and looking at what we've got to finish up for the rest of the year, at the end of every quarter, are we meeting those goals? Like we do have processes in place for that, but like um to me, it's the more organic, natural stuff that comes up that I always remember. And it's what differentiates doing this to stuff I've done in the past. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you're doing work that matters, it is a way of life. Like you said, I think that was an apt way of putting it because it's not just you're not just building websites. It's more about the connection and the contribution and then just the vehicle that you happen to be in at this point is web design. And that's always been the same way for us with the martial arts. It was the best way for us to contribute and build meaningful human connections. And that's evolved and expanded over the years. But in the end, it all comes back to just doing work that matters. So that was beautiful. Now, I do want to ask you a like kind of a more technical question about your expertise. So, you can build a website on Wix for $25 a month or something like that. So why should someone pay thousands of dollars to have a website built when you can do it on Wix for much cheaper? So what does the average person not know about how websites work?
Well, I got to be careful on how I answer this because I I personally don't like Wix as a platform. I mean, I think it's acceptable and I think it's a great tool because there are businesses out there that um, they watch a 2-hour video on YouTube and they can put together a Wix website that looks pretty good. And I'm not gonna lie, it's something that is sufficient for many businesses. And, I talk to people a lot of times. In fact, I was just talking to someone recently about this, and I'm like, yeah, what you really need is a brochure site. You're not looking to get SEO through it. It's really just there. It's kind of like a LinkedIn profile for you. You want to you need a website to show that you're a legitimate business, but you're not ready for, you don't need to have any fancy tools on there. It really just has to have maybe, your business name, your logo, how to find your business, your contact info, and things like that. Um, and that's where I think it's perfectly acceptable to use a site like Wix. And I mean, it's the challenge is that we see a lot of businesses that they start on Wix and then they grow and then they outgrow Wix. So that's why we always recommend WordPress. With WordPress, it's like a solid foundation. I joke, it's kind of this is a little crass, but like I always say with WordPress, you own the trailer, you made it, you don't own the land, but you own the trailer, so you can pick it up and move it. With Wix, it's a little bit more challenging. So, we've done some Wix and Shopify and Squarespace um, conversions for folks that have outgrown those platforms because those platforms do have their limitations. Um, one site, we were looking at where the platform, I think it was Wix actually, that limits the amount of variance you have. So like, let's say hypothetically, you're a candle company. You create a website on Wix, and then you want to do let's say you have 40 different scents of candles. You want to do a 3-pack. Well, and I I should have picked a better example because I can't do the math in my head for this, but it's like 40 times 40 times 40. You've got to create variations for it. using their platform. And if you only have 40 variants and 40 kinds of candles, it's pretty easy for you to do it yourself, and you don't need to necessarily hire somebody to do that. But then like you start doing more complex things where maybe you want to use a different payment processor because Wix is taking 3% of you know, all your payments, and if you can go with an independent one, you can probably cut that in half. Um, you can, Wix doesn't allow, I think they limit you to something like 75. At least the last time I looked, it was like either 75 or 100 variants. So, if you have two, 40 times 40 is 800 because it's like you have candle one and candle one, candle two and candle two, candle, one and candle two, candle one and candle three. Like you can kind of understand it's like, it's like a factorial to get into the actual math terms. So, um, you have all these different variants in there, and some of those platforms aren't able to support that. Now, like, let's say you're a bookkeeper and or a CPA, and all you want is just so people can look you up and find you online. A Wix site is okay, and there's times where people will come to us and they're like, "Oh, I want this, I want this," and I'm like, "You can have that." Um, but I mean, this is a more low cost thing. And I had a conversation with somebody last week just on this exact topic where I'm like, yeah, you can probably get away with that. But if you want to grow, like what happens a lot of times with people is that, they'll start a Wix website and then they'll start doing their blogs on there. And then they decide, oh my gosh, I need to add this functionality in. I've started doing YouTube videos, and like we have controls that are, we call plugins that we can add to a WordPress site that allows you to connect right to your YouTube channel. And so when you upload a video to YouTube, your website automatically gets updated. So you don't have to go in and do the work twice. On Wix, that's very, very expensive and difficult to do. On WordPress, it's something we can do pretty easily. So, like when they want to make a move and they have 300 blog posts that they put on Wix, um, it's just more work to move it over. So, it's kind of like, moving from one house to another. If you can pick it up and just put it on a truck and move it, there's a cost associated there. But if you have to kind of rebuild the whole thing in a whole new place, there's a much bigger cost that way. So that's really the key for it. I mean, um, I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask because I asked this question myself. Because I see a lot of folks, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a web designer. I'm like, cool, what platforms you work on? Oh, Wix. And I'm like, okay. Um, and I think there's a place for those folks too, because there are people that need a very, very low cost solution. Um, but to me, it's like I don't think there's a lot of value and a lot of opportunity out there for that because if someone can just figure out how to do it themselves, Wix is very, very easy to use. Um, so like, yeah, why would you go out and hire someone to do your Wix site for you, when you can probably do it yourself? It's kind of like, to me, I use the analogy of cutting your lawn, right? Like, I pay somebody to cut my lawn, but for what I pay him every year, I could probably buy two lawnmowers and enough gas to cut it twice a week, you know. Um, but it's the time that I'm saving. So like that's kind of the other piece of it, is that, like with us, and I can go on and on about this because, with Wix, you're kind of stuck with Wix. You're stuck with their infrastructure. With WordPress, you don't like your hosting company, you can move it. You don't like your web designer, you can move it over to somebody else. Like, it's so that's really high level, why some businesses, Wix isn't the right, you know, answer for them. I do think that Wix is a better platform than Squarespace. I think they're better for SEO and better for security than Squarespace is. But again, I don't claim to be an expert on those technologies. I know enough about it. We have people on the team that support those platforms for folks that need it. But we're primarily all of our new websites are done in WordPress. So
All right, that leads me to my little wrap up questions here. So the first one that I like to ask people is, what should someone look for in someone who does what you do? How do you find someone that's a trustworthy web designer?
I think, you know, and I want to be careful how I word this because there's a lot of folks in this industry that aren't trustworthy. Um, but you want to really find someone that's really passionate about what they're doing, whether it's web design or any business. And you can usually figure that out when you talk with them because if you know, I do most of the web design for us and I'm involved in every project. And because that's what I'm passionate about, and it's kind of like the team will have to sometimes pull me away from because I get too involved sometimes. I think because I'm like, oh, because I want everything to be perfect, right? Um, so I think, asking people really understanding where their passion is. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that sell web design and they really don't do it. They don't really understand it. They may think they understand it because they've read a bunch of stuff or maybe they've built a couple sites on their own. But I always ask people to challenge your web designer and ask them how they tackle a really difficult problem. Like, I want to yeah, there's basic stuff that anyone can do, like, putting pictures and videos on a page. But like, when you talk to them and say, oh, I have, I use this CRM. How can I integrate WordPress into that and or integrate it into my website? How do I put a mortgage calculator on my website? How do I do this? And then that's what you'll see because you want to really assess the skills of who you're dealing with. Um, you want a web designer that can grow with you. And it's the same with, again, any business. Like, like you guys do martial arts. So, if you're only like a green belt, when someone gets to green belt, it's like, how are you going to teach them all the way up to black? Or if you're a first degree black belt, obviously there's only one 10th degree black belt in Shaolin Kempo. But like, if, someone wants to progress beyond black belt, you want to have someone that's a 7 or 8th degree black belt that can, you want to you want your web designer to be skilled enough that they can take your business to whatever level it needs to be. So those are the types of questions I would ask. It's like, what's your skill set? What do show me some of the things that you personally, because there's platforms and I'm going to actually name some names on platforms. There's two that in particular that I tell people to shy away from. There's a platform called Duda, and that a lot of people build websites in. Everyone that's come to me with the Duda site has been unhappy. I've had the team reach out to me from Duda, telling me how I can make more money as a web designer, which they completely misunderstand how I like to do business. It's like, it's great that, all right, yeah, they're like, Duda developers make a higher percentage than WordPress developers. And I'm like, well, how does that help the client? It's like you're going to reduce it's like you know, I don't want to get a bigger cut of what I'm selling for you. I want to go out there, create a solution that's best for my client. There's also folks out there, they're just like they're salespeople that have, whether it's offshore or people in the US, but they're not doing the work. They're just like out there, flapping their gums, talking about how you should, you do this, like you need this type of website. I've had friends reach out to me and tell me horror stories about these people. So I mean, like when you ask them, like that's the first thing, are you a web developer yourself? And if they say yes, then say, how long have you been doing it? If it's less than 5 years, then you probably don't want to do business with them.
That makes a lot of
Especially if
sense.
especially if it's under a year. And I don't mean to be harsh. I mean, there's people that are just fresh out of school, and that's a different story. You're hiring a freelancer, a kid out of college that has some experience. That's a little bit different. But like, when you have people that are like, we see it in real estate all the time where it's like, oh, a lot of people are realtors. I'm going to go get my real estate license and, start selling homes. It's a heck of a lot harder than it looks, and that's the thing about web design. So the other thing I'd ask is tell me about the most challenging project that you built, and show it to me. I want to see how it works. Like, like you want to ask people direct questions because you're investing thousands of dollars in someone that's going to handle one of your most important, if not the most important marketing asset for your business. You want to make sure that they know what they're doing and they can be trusted. So,
Yeah, awesome. All right. So, what is the most valuable lesson that you've learned through your entrepreneurial journey over the years?
a lot of lessons I've learned. Um, the biggest lesson I've learned, it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, is the relationships that you build. Um, you never know how someone's going to impact your life. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago when you were there. But I'll share this for the folks on the that are watching this is that you know I went to a networking event online and I met someone who's now one of my closest friends and it was like a domino effect. Meeting him led to me meeting to someone else, led me to meeting. And when I look at this path that, the journey overall that I've followed, um, some of the people that have been instrumental are people that looking back at the time I would have never guessed, would have had that type of an impact. And, I know I've known you and Ken for about a little over a year now. And there's like, we're not really sure where that's going to lead at this point. Like there's probably something that maybe our connection, whether it's for you or Ken or myself, um, will maybe bring us somewhere. And it's like when we look back, it's like me, that one particular relationship. And I see a lot of people will discount people, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, because they really only want to work with they want to work with people that are potential customers. They may like bypass someone, and that's a huge mistake that a lot of people make. It's like everybody's got value, everybody has a story, everybody, you just never know when that's going to happen. So like my rule is to be nice to everybody. When I remember going to an interview at a hospital, and I was talking with the person doing the gardening outside while I was waiting for the interviewer to come down and get me. And the interviewer told me after the fact that she's like, I was really impressed with the fact that you were talking to a gardener. And I'm like, yeah, I said, it's like, I've got stuff outside and I just thought what they were doing were interesting and they looked really nice. I want to compliment the person. They're out there on a hot day, sweating it out. And so, I mean, it's like just be nice to people, treat people with respect. Don't, don't do stuff to people that you wouldn't want them to do to you. A lot of that goes without saying, but you'd be shocked at how few people get that. A lot of people have this attitude of the world owes them everything, and and that's they take some of these programs, and it's like I see them at meetings that I go to or networking events, and they're like, I have the best this and I have the best that. I'm like, good. What you don't have is the best attitude, and that's why people are not gonna, And I've seen people fail miserably. I've watched them fail miserably because of that. So to me the biggest lesson is, yeah, it's just manage your relationships, treat people well, and have integrity. It's like your character is the most important thing you have. And I'll kind of end this with one other quick note is that, like, I because we're in marketing, I see a lot of people and their marketing is wonderful, but it's like putting lipstick on a pig, right? Like, when you remove it's still a pig. It's like if you don't have it on the inside, um, it'll eventually show through. Yeah, you may get a few clients here, you may grow your business a little bit, but in the long run, you're gonna fail.
Awesome. Really good advice. All right. Now, the most important question: how can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
JVF.com is our website. You've got all the options on there to book a meeting, to follow us on social. You can email us, call us. That's probably your best hub, obviously, the website. But I'm on all the major social media sites. And you can email me, call me, whatever. All my numbers are out there. If you have any questions, we love hearing from folks. We love to help. Um, Yeah, so if you have any follow-up questions that you'd like to learn more about, feel free to reach out. Again, jvf.com, you can fill out a form and just send us a note. You can book a meeting like right there online. It's all good.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. There was a lot of good nuggets in there. You've definitely lived a life that is well integrated. So thank you for joining me today and keep being you, man. You're doing awesome.
Thank you so much.